Greetings everybody, it's Emily from Pages and Ink, and today I will be doing my favorite Friday jar drawing, where there's a bunch of topics in this jar that says, say, Friday, and then I talk about it for a little while and say pretty much whatever comes to mind. Before I do that, I'm going to show you guys these, my new purchases. So I have Wire and Nerve, the graphic novel by Marissa Meyer to add to the Lunar Chronicles series. It's got beautiful artwork and it's so much bigger than I thought it was going to be, but I'm so grateful for how big it is. But I believe it centers around Aiko and she's like helping the gang on Luna, but it has all of her favorite characters like Cinder and Scarlet and Crest and Winter and all of them. At least I believe it has Winter in it too. It may not. But anyway, I also have King's Cage, which is the third and I believe the final book in the Red Queen series, and if you do get King's Cage from Barnes & Noble edition, or I don't know, maybe other special editions have it, but there is a Red Queen timeline, and I would be careful because I was trying to figure out what it was, and I read something that made me very sad and like spoiled it for me. I'm still gonna read it, it's not that big of a spoiler, it was just kind of like, it was about a specific character, and I was like, no, that can't happen. That's not good. But anyway, without further ado, time to draw from the jar. Alright, so got one, and it is the Chronicles of Vladimir Tod, which is one of my favorite book series, and I know I've talked about it quite a few times on my channel. And I guess I could bring them all down, but they're all up there, and I'm not gonna bother with it. The Chronicles of Vladimir Tod is a book by Zach Brewer, or a book series by Zach Brewer, that I read probably in the 7th grade, I want to say. I was like just a year younger than when Vlad was going through school, because it was 8th grade Bleeds, 9th grade Slays, 10th grade Bites. No, 8th grade Bites, 9th grade Slays, 10th grade Bleeds, 11th grade Slays, and 11th grade Burns. I think it's 11th grade Burns and 12th grade Slays. I forgot. So it's 5 books, and then it also has 3 other books for the Slayer Chronicles, which is like an adjoining series. It's based in the same universe at about the same time as the other books. So yeah. These books are incredibly special to me, and I am a very proud minion of Zach Brewer. Because at the time that I found these, I guess I just really needed a friend. Because when I read them, I was really attached to all the characters, especially Vlad, and because I kind of understood. Granted, okay, so there's Vlad and his best friend Henry. And for me and my best friend, I always felt like I was Vlad and she was Henry. And in a way, that was kind of the thing, was because I was pretty shy, I was kind of quiet, and she was very social. But I also knew a lot of people because my mom worked at the school that I went to. And I ended up in 8th grade being class president, which is what Henry got to do. So I guess in some ways we were both Vlad and Henry, but I always felt like I was in her shadow. Like, she always got better grades. She was more creative. I felt like her artistic skills were a lot better. She was so much better in sports than I was. So I just kind of felt like I was in her shadow, like Vlad feels like he's in his shadow. But I guess I was a little more popular than like Vlad. But moving on. So I made that connection. Plus, I've always really liked vampires. I like the idea of immortality, because death, or actually it's more of life after death, is one of my fears. I am Catholic and I do believe in heaven, but I don't, as many times as it's told to me that, like, you know, this is a place for souls and it's happy and I guess you get to experience it, I feel like such a good place is something that, like, you won't get to experience. Like, your soul will go, but you're not conscious because you're dead. So what my fear is like the black void. But so immortality has always kind of been something. I'm not gonna go searching for it and go all crazy. It's just, death is scary. And there's a lot of like AUs where death is your friend and people are so afraid of death, but death is actually a really nice person, and I'm just kind of like, that's nice. I know I shouldn't be scared, but it's the uncertainty, I guess, that I don't like, and the idea of spending an eternity in the dark. And I'm thankful that right now I can talk about it, because usually I don't have like a panic attack necessarily, but it gets pretty close sometimes. So moving on. But I was really attached to Vlad as a character, and I did have a crush on him. He was one of my first literary baes. But he was also a really good friend. I could always kind of depend on his story to like help me feel better when things were kind of down. And in the second book, he and Henry kind of have this falling out, and I could definitely relate to it because my best friend and I were fighting a lot at the time, and it was really relatable to me, and I really needed a friend, even though I had a couple other friends at the time. I don't know, the characters I loved, the story was pretty interesting, and what Vladimir Tod, the Chronicles of Vladimir Tod is about is a boy who's a vampire. I probably should explain this first, but he's a vampire teenager, and it starts in 8th grade, ends in 12th grade, and he knows what he is, and he lives with his aunt, and his parents are dead. But he doesn't really know how far his powers really go, because he's also part human. Like, he was born and not bitten. So he's an anomaly, and nobody really knows how far his powers go. And he meets this guy who he thinks is the antagonist. And I guess I'll spoil this for you for the first book, but he's actually a good guy, and the antagonist is pretty much the main antagonist throughout the whole book. But, you know, he meets his uncle, and his uncle kind of helps to train him, and they make a whole lot of friends. They're vampires, and they all help Vlad in their own way. And at one point, they have to go through, like, a court trial because they think that Vlad's father is really alive, and Vlad's like, no, he's dead. And they're like, well, then you have to pay for his crimes, which was expose vampires to humans. And it was just, yeah. So, to me, it's a really good series. I love it. I reread it last year. The Slayer Chronicles is about Henry's cousin Joss, who is a vampire slayer. And how he kind of becomes a slayer, and the events after the second book, or the second book. It's the third book that Henry and Vlad have problems, and they get all mixed together. I love them a lot. I actually love them enough that at one point my best friend and I used to communicate using the special code that they have in the book, which is called the Legion Code. And I also rewrote the first book into a screenplay. But this play is pretty much word for word the book, so it's got like 3-4 acts, and I'm like, this will never be put on as a show because it'll just take way too long. But I didn't want to cut anything out. I felt like everything important needed to be in there. I did cut out a couple things, but yeah, I don't think I could ever be like a adapter, like a book to movie type person, because I would just be like, this has to stay and this has to stay, and then the movie ends up being like 6 hours long and everybody's like, oh, this movie. Anyway, I think that might actually be all I really have to talk about. But yeah, this series holds a special place in my heart. It's what got me back into reading, and where I had actually found it was a Nickelodeon magazine, which I know I have talked about before, probably in my last book, my last video where I talked about, drop something on my jar, about how, like the gateway books that I had started to read, and it helped me get back into reading, and this is one of them. And it's just, Vlad is a friend. He holds a very dear place in my heart, and I love him and all the other characters, and I do recommend it. I'm almost 22, so I think if you're my age and you try to read it, you may not connect anymore because you're out of school, and these are kind of about him going through last year of middle school and high school. So you may not like it as much as, say, you were in 8th grade, but if you are younger, especially if you're either just getting into high school or, you know, you're in middle school and you're watching my video right now, which I doubt, but, you know, shout out to you, you may like it. If you like vampires and you have difficulty going through school, like making friends and, you know, just handling things, he may be of some help. You may learn to find a friend in him too. But that's all I have to say. I love you guys very, very much. My owl crate shipped yesterday night, so it says it should be here tomorrow. So I should have a unboxing video tomorrow. I am also going to try my darndest to have an announcement video either tomorrow or sometime next week. I do have more hours at work next week than I've been having lately, so I don't know when that will be, if it is next week, but I'm gonna try. Bear with me. But I love you guys. Thank you so much. I will see you guys very, very soon. Hope you guys have a wonderful weekend and a happy Friday, and happy reading.